Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we'll discuss 7 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs explained to you in the easiest language possible. The topics are as follow. From your analysis section, which also provides you the avenue to practice daily answer writing, in the first topic, we are going to analyze the potential of hydropower in our country in the context of the Arunachal Pradesh declaring this particular decade of 2025 to 2035 as the decade of hydropower. Then, in the second topic, we'll try to comprehensively analyze the insurance penetration in our country and the steps taken by the Government of India in this particular context. Then, from your simplified section, we'll take up 5 news. We will not only try to simplify the news for you, but also provide you the much important value addition, keeping in mind the approaching Mains 2025. So, stay tuned. Arunachal Pradesh has declared the decade of 2025 to 2035 as a decade of hydropower to harness a state's potential to generate 58,000 megawatts of electricity. So this impetus which has been provided to the renewable energy sector by the government of Arunachal Pradesh provides an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of renewable energy sector. So let's first try to decode the news today. The news tells us that how Arunachal Pradesh is basically targeting to generate 58 gigawatt of hydropower by the year of 2035, for which purpose it is basically going to utilize the various mega, large and small hydroelectric projects network in the state with a major impetus on the overall development of the industrial ecosystem along with it. The idea is that from this 58 gigawatt of renewable energy which the Arunachal Pradesh is going to generate, 12% of it will be available as a kind of a free power from each hydroelectric power plant. And 1% of this power will be kind of directed towards the local development fund. The estimation by the Arunachal Pradesh government is that they are basically going to incur an annual revenue from this hydropower plant generation of electricity and selling of that of around 45,000 plus crore by the year of 2035. And there would be a kind of a combined capacity generation of 19 gigawatt of renewable energy. The idea is that, for example, at this instance, you guys can recall that in the COP26, that is Conference of Party 26 of the United Nations Conference on Climate Change, India took the Glasgow target or Glasgow commitments, in which we committed to ourselves a very ambitious target that by the year of 2030, we are basically going to generate 500 gigawatts of renewable energy. The idea is that out of this 500 gigawatt, approximately 20 gigawatt of hydropower renewable energy would come from one specific state, and that is going to be Arunachal Pradesh itself. The question which shall be arising in your mind at this instance is that what is the share of hydropower in the total renewable energy capacity which we have. So for example, as per the data provided to us by the Ministry of Power, as late as October month of 2024, the renewable energy from the hydropower, which are more than 25 megawatt electricity generator, the share is around 23%, and approximately 3% or 2.5% is being generated from the small hydropower. So basically, small hydropower and large hydropower together constitutes approximately 1/4 of our total renewable energy generation. Now, if we talk about the total hydropower potential capacity which our river has, the all India hydropower generation capacity actually exists around 140 gigawatt. How much we are actually producing right now? We are only producing 46 gigawatt. So basically means that we are only producing the hydropower of 33% of our total capacity at this stage. The largest capacity yet to be taken up under the construction is in the Brahmaputra river, followed by your Indus river system, then Ganga river system. And if we talk about our country's share in the terms of hydropower generation capacity and production in the terms of the whole world, currently India is the 5th largest hydropower generator in the world. The largest is China, followed by Brazil, Canada, USA, and recently India has taken over the Russia to become the 5th largest hydropower generator in the world. However, there exist several issues with hydropower generation as well. And first and foremost is obviously the climatic factors. So for example, recently, the headlines were that how India's hydropower output actually recorded the steepest fall in nearly 4 decades, when the hydropower share in India's total power output actually fell to a record low of 8.3% in the year of 2024. And what were the factors which actually contributed to this steepest fall? The first and foremost is obviously the high dependence on the rainfall which we have. So for example, the dependence of Indians on the monsoon rainfall is not a new phenomenon. Almost 40% of the population, 60% of the livestock and 80% of the crops are actually grown in the rain-fed area. Almost 46% of the farmers are still dependent upon the monsoon rainfall for any kind of production. In a similar way, when we talk about the southern states which basically constitutes for 22% of the total hydropower generation capacity, these southern states are basically kind of imbibed with not any perennial river. The perennial river which are flowing from the melting of any glacier, that is something which is not taking place in this southern state. So it is obvious that they are highly dependent upon the monsoonal rainfall for their hydropower generation. So let's say if there take place any kind of climatic variability which has been caused by any geophysical phenomena such as for example El Nino. So if there is taking place El Nino induced drought leading to kind of decline in the monsoonal rainfall, don't you think that the hydropower generation capacity of the southern states will be compromised as well? At the same time, because of the climate change induced global warming which is taking place, and this global warming is basically leading to what? The kind of glacier melting and thawing of permafrost. And that is actually leading to various kind of extreme weather events. So for example, in the north and the eastern region states, which basically comprise of 60% of the total hydropower generation, these states are basically facing various extreme weather events like flash floods. And these flash floods are basically leading to the compromise of the hydropower generation. In a similar fashion, this glacier melting and the thawing of the permafrost is basically the layer of the frozen ice from decades and centuries, that has started melting. So some of you will argue that, sir, that is good for hydropower generation because of the increase in the flow of the water. The idea is that first of all, the immense increase in the flow of the water in the river system, it has basically led to kind of rivers deviating from their normal terrain altogether. The second is that has basically kind of compromised the stability of the mountain slopes. So normally these dams are basically situated on these mountain slopes, this run of the river dam projects, which basically kind of utilizes the principle of gravity. So when the water from a height basically starts flowing towards downside, the potential energy is converted into kinetic energy, and this energy is basically utilized by the turbines to actually generate this hydropower. The idea is that if there is such immense flow, the mountain stability itself gets compromised, and thus such run of the river projects are basically getting washed away altogether. So thus, in the context of the aftermath of the Kedarnath floods of 2013, the government basically appointed a committee called as Ravi Chopra Committee. And Ravi Chopra Committee, after a detailed study of the Himalayan region, it basically said that such hydroelectric projects in the Himalayan region are basically going to have an irreversible impact on the ecology of the region. And the same was ascertained by the Ministry of Jal Shakti report 2019 as well, which basically said that such high, hydropower electric projects can actually alter the ecological flow downstream altogether. So it's basically leading to what? The compromise of the biodiversity across the fertile Gangetic belt. At the same time, you guys might be aware about the recently released World Population Report by the UNFPA, according to which our population has reached to only 146 crore, making us the most populous country in the world. The idea is that to sustain this population, how much of the water resource we have? 4%. And are we trying to apply some modern technologies to kind of conserve the water? Applying some techniques for rainwater harvesting, applying certain techniques for the modern methods of irrigation, such as for example drip irrigation or something? Absolutely not. So that is also leading to high water wastage as well. All of that is basically leading to low reservoir levels. For example, if you look at the kind of the report which has been provided to us by the Ministry of Jal Shakti itself, the 150 key reservoir which we have, only 21% of them are now capable enough to fill to their optimum capacity. For example, there is your Indra Sagar Dam in the state of Madhya Pradesh, which was filled only to 17% of its total capacity in the year of 2024. The same Indra Sagar Reservoir Dam, which is actually capable of generating 1% hydropower generation, 1 gigawatt of hydropower generation. So these are the issues which are basically hampering the region. For this, to understand it better, we can take a case study of Tista project. Tista is basically a river, is a tributary of Brahmaputra, and it basically originates from the North Sikkim at the elevation of 5,280 meter, and then it starts flowing. It flows for around 150 km in Sikkim, 123 km in West Bengal. Then it basically flows in the region of Bangladesh and ultimately basically drains in the region of Bay of Bengal. The idea is that because of this melting of glacier which is taking place, this particular river is now following an undulating train altogether because of the erratic rainfall and because of the unconsolidated sediment. So the river is basically changing its courses very frequently. Second, the idea is that now if the river is basically changing its courses and we are trying to create a dam here, there can be a lot of environment risk. And even to balance this environment risk, there can be high cost of balancing as well. So obviously the project cost is going to increase at quite high. At the same time, it is also kind of further augmented by the poor environment impact assessment under the Environment Conservation Act of 1986. So let's say, for example, what the projects or the private players who had taken the projects to kind of create the dams in this particular river, what they did, they basically created a concrete faced rock-filled dam to actually save on the cost. But because of the high amount of water supply, these projects were completely washed away in the flash floods which took place recently. So what has been the result of such poor planning and execution? Obviously the loss of lives and damage to property. All of this, the environmental damage, the loss of life, the damage to property, all of that has led to poor public perception itself. Then there is a lot of property disputes to kind of, acquire the property from the people in such hilly regions to kind of create the dams. The right to property, which is a legal right under Article 300A of the Constitution. Thus, the idea is that today's article tells that how in the year of 1990, there were 47 projects which were actually proposed on this Tista river, and 3 decades down the line, only 5 projects has been able to install. So these are the major issues which are prevailing. At the same time, there is external factor as well. For example, China. So recently we read that how China is basically going to create a 60 gigawatt Medoc project on the upper stream of the Brahmaputra river, which basically is called as Yarlung Tsangpo. So obviously when it is going to create a dam at the upper stream, don't you think it is going to kind of have a detrimental impact on the downstream in our country? And this Medoc project with the China is creating, that is actually 3 times have more generation capacity than the 3 Georges dam, which is currently the world's biggest hydropower generation dam itself. The various researchers and various kind of economy prospects has actually kind of offered that we should create a dam on Siang river of at least 10 gigawatt to kind of counter this particular Medoc project of China. And all of this is actually leading to what? India has been brought on the brink of the worst ever water crisis altogether, where there are some 600 million people who are facing acute water shortages. The crisis is going to worsen further because the demand is going to rise or get double by the year of 2030. There are 21 cities, including the major ones like the national capital of our country, New Delhi, which is going to run out of the groundwater. 6% of the GDP is going to be likely to be the loss, and around 2 lakh Indians will die every year because they will not have access to clean water. At the same time, what is going to be the implication of such low hydropower potential? The first and foremost is that if the hydropower generation is going to decline and the power demand keeps on rising, don't you think that will actually lead to kind of a supply-demand mismatch? And that has already started occurring. For example, in the year of 23 to 2024, the total power demand actually reached to 239 gigawatt. That was the peak demand. And we were actually deficit of around 4.4%. So obviously there is going to be a power demand supply mismatch. And if this will happen, don't you think that our reliance on thermal power plants will actually increase further? The thermal power plants which are basically using the fossil fuels, like for example coal, petroleum and natural gas. So because of that, to generate power from that, there will be further release of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide that will actually further induce the global warming. And if our reliance on fossil fuel will increase, don't you think that will actually lead to kind of a balance of payment crisis because of the huge import dependency which we have? At the same time, when we are talking about the increasing generation of the carbon dioxide, we have to keep this in mind that India is already has the fourth largest per capita emission of carbon dioxide. If we talk about in the country wise, we are at the third, following China, US. Then European Union is combined at 3 and India is placed at 4th. With our per capita ton of CO2 generation stands at around 1.2 ton. This was the question which appeared in your prelims examination this year as well. So, what are the steps which has been taken by the government of India to kind of provide boost to the hydropower generation? The first is that the government has brought all the large hydropower projects which have generation capacity of more than 25 megawatt under the category of renewable energy projects. So such large projects like, for example, Nagarjuna Sagar, which is on the river Krishna in Andhra Pradesh, or Baira Sul, which is on the Baira river in Himachal, Sardar Sarovar on Narmada river in the region of Gujarat. All such mega large hydropower projects will now get the same benefit which is basically accorded to any kind of renewable energy project. Then the power distribution companies has been kind of provided with hydro purchase obligations, that a certain share of their total power purchasing capacity will constitute of hydropower as well. At the same time, the interstate transmission charges has been waived off so that there can be more integration of the hydropower in the transmission line, and the cost of this hydropower transmission is going to decline as well. Also, in the recent articles, there has been major impetus by the government of India, especially the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, to promote the pumped storage project. So for example, when there is large scale flow in the river, we can create a pumped storage to kind of store the excess water. And when the peak demand rises and there is less supply of water, we can release this water using the principle of gravity to kind of utilize the kinetic energy and run the turbines to generate the hydropower. Ultimately, the budgetary support will be provided to kind of the various states such as Arunachal Pradesh. By government is saying that okay, we are going to create the enabling infrastructure for these renewable energy projects. We will create railways, transmission lines, etc. You just create these dams and run them efficiently. So remember this hydropower potential capacity which we have, the underutilization of it, the challenges, as well as the steps which has been taken by the government of India to answer this particular question. We move forward to the next news. The article basically highlights about the need of the inclusion of the war damages in the insurance sector in the context of the recent successful conducting of the Operation Sindoor by our military against our dear neighbor Pakistan, to actually kind of provide the security of capital and life to the people who are living in the border state. Currently, in our traditional insurance sector system, the damages which occur because of the war which has taken place, that is something which is not covered under any insurance product. So this is a kind of a new idea which is being envisaged by the insurance companies. And this concept forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of issues related to Indian economy. The insurance sector in our country acts as a major growth driver for the capital market. The reason for that is that these insurance companies actually kind of invest 50% of their total corpus of investment in the debt and equity market, thus providing as a major source of lending the funds which are required for that, as well as ensure the efficient money supply in our country. So if you guys are wondering about the status of the insurance sector, let's refer to the World Bank report, which basically talks about that how India's life insurance sector was actually nationalized in the year of 1956 with the establishment of Life Insurance Corporation under the Ministry of Finance. Even till today, the Life Insurance Corporation acts as the largest insurance company in our country with total asset under management which stands at around 54 lakh crore. Then the non-life insurance sector was actually nationalized in the year of 1972. However, because of the lower insurance penetration in the Indian economy, especially which was required after the LPG reforms of 1991, the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India was established as a statutory body in the year of 1999. And by the year of 2000, the India's insurance market was open not only for the private players but for the foreign players as well. An example of that is the budget 2019, which basically provided that how now 100% foreign direct investment is allowed in the India's insurance market. If we refer to the World Bank report, it basically tells us that how this particular insurance sector in our country is going to have a valuation of $222 billion by the year of 2026, growing with a compounded annual growth rate of 17%. Thus, the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India (IRDAI) estimates that by the year of 2030, we are going to become the 6th largest insurance market in our country, and the annual insurance premium is going to increase 14% per year. Currently, which country has the largest insurance market in the world? That is USA, closely followed by China. What do we mean by this 14% insurance premium? What is insurance premium? Insurance premium is nothing but the amount which is paid by an individual to kind of avail any kind of insurance product. Keep this particular term in your mind. The idea is that to achieve this target, to become the 6th largest insurance market in the world by year of 2030, there are several roadblocks which are kind of acting as an impediment in our way. First and foremost is the prevailing insurance gap which exists. For that, we'll take two examples. One is going to be the insurance penetration and the second is going to be insurance density. What do we mean by insurance penetration? It is basically the total amount of insurance premium which has been paid by the people divided by the total GDP of the country. That basically shows that what is the share of the economic output which is actually kind of being diverted to buy insurance product, and that currently stands at 4% of the GDP for our country. If we refer to USA, it stands at 11% of the GDP, and the insurance penetration in the world stands at 6.8% of the total world's GDP. In comparison to that, we have an abysmal share of 4% of the GDP, which basically showcases that there is a large scale of population which are not investing their money to cover their risk by any kind of insurance. That also reflects at the low financial inclusion which we have and the larger share of the population which does not have or fallen in the middle income category yet. Second important criteria is insurance density. This is again the total amount of premium paid by the people, the total premium in the country divided by the total population. So that basically shows the kind of the density of insurance which exists among the larger population. For our country, that is only $92. For USA, it is staggering $8,885. And if you look at the world average, it stands at $853. That basically showcases that, first of all, there is a very low share of Indian populace who are actually availing any kind of insurance product. Even if they are availing such insurance product, the amount of that insurance product is bare minimum. So basically, there is a large scale population which is completely devoid of any kind of insurance coverage for any kind of financial risk. So they are not being covered for, let's say, for example, any kind of extreme weather events like heat wave which are taking place, the tropical cyclone if it might occur in the future, or for example, if there is any kind of extreme events like, for example, border security, which is in the context of the news itself. And such large population actually constitutes of whom? The gig workers who are out of any social security net, the large scale rural population, the large scale multidimensionally poor population which we have. So it basically also reflects the kind of the economic growth which our country has. Then there are certain other challenges. First of all, it is heavily public sector dominated. So for example, the share of the LIC in the total insurance market itself in our country is around 62%. And such large share or dominance by a single player leads to what? A kind of a non-competitive market economy. So let's say, for example, there are 6 shops in your area and there are 10 consumers to buy from this 6 shop. But if the 6 consumers are buying only from your shop itself, you will not do any kind of innovation because you have got the larger share in the market anyway. The same is happening with LIC as well. It is not bringing any kind of innovative products which can cater to the demand of Industry 4.0. Second is heavy dominance of life insurance sector. So for example, 75% of the total insurance penetration in our country is nothing but the life insurance. The non-life insurance only constitutes to 1% of the GDP. That basically means that the other risks, like for example, vehicle insurance, insurance of any valuable product, all of that only constitutes 1% of the GDP in our country. Then we are basically non-catering to the demands of emerging challenges. Emerging challenges such as, for example, any kind of crop failure which has been caused because of the extreme weather event. Or for example, in the today's context, if there is kind of border attack which is taking place and that has led to property damage. Or for example, if there is any kind of cyber crime theft which has occurred. All of these are not fall under the bracket of insurance in the traditional insurance setup. The idea is that there are also issues with the corporate governance setup. So first of all, for example, there exists a prevailing digital gap. So for example, recently we were discussing that how only 55% of the total rural population has access to any kind of fast internet. So basically, when there are larger scale companies who are providing insurance now, either they are internet based or platform based companies. So it's very obvious that the remaining 45% of the rural population does not have access to it. And the augmentation of such factors is, for example, large scale unemployment, large scale unawareness, such huge reliance on internet these days by the platforms to provide insurance, all of that lead to rural urban divide. So for example, only 8 to 10% of the total rural population falls under the ambit of any kind of insurance coverage. Then within the corporate governance, there exists a huge skill mismatch to kind of gauge the need of the customer, to provide them kind of design and kind of tailor-made products because of the lack of talent management. And such manual screenings, manual kind of paperwork, all of that lead to delays and the higher cost of operation as well. Even in the insurance which is being offered, many of the time there exists opaque claim management. So for example, there are certain hidden clauses. So you go to the, let's say you have taken a health insurance, you go to the hospital, the bill is charged, you send it to your insurance company. The insurance company will come with an excuse that no, because you fell on the right side of your bike, that is not covered. You should have fallen on the left side of the bike. So such hidden clauses actually leads to what? Lack of transparency and poor customer experience. So many people actually refrain from such taking insurance altogether. Why to pay money for that? So the government has taken several steps to kind of curtail these challenges. First and foremost is your Saral Bima Yojana, where the government is saying that okay, it has kind of provided a uniform guideline which should be followed by all the insurance companies. The government is also saying that we are going to provide you 5 to 25 lakh of insurance cover, and now that is applicable for any person above the 18 years old. So earlier there was a threshold limit of 65 years, that only till 65 years you can take insurance. The government is saying that no, now that threshold limit will not be applicable. Any person above the 18 years can take the insurance cover under the Saral Bima Yojana. Second is a Sugam platform which has been created by the government to kind of bring the customer, the distributor, the insurance provider, all of them at one single platform for effective price discovery. Second is the Vistar. So under this particular thing, the government is providing insurance coverage to women entrepreneurs, specifically in the rural area. Then there is your Bima Vahak as well. So under Bima Vahak and Vistar, what the government is trying to do, the government is saying that, okay, see, let's say for example, you are going to avail health care. Under the healthcare, within that ambit, let's try to expand it and provide various kind of insurance cover at a single platform for the ease of the customer. Ultimately, the government is basically trying to tell the insurance companies that bring up your insurance data and kind of align it with the digital health registry, which is basically being created on the National Health Digital Mission, which the government has launched. Okay. Point is that we further need to enhance our insurance cover. For that, the government has basically launched the Pradhan Mantri Ayushman Bharat Yojana, where the government is already providing 5 lakh rupees per family per year of insurance cover. So it is the world's largest health insurance scheme, where your treatment in both secondary and tertiary healthcare is kind of sponsored by the government. It's a centrally sponsored scheme. So it's kind of the fund which is being provided is shared between the center and the state government. It basically covers both a government hospital as well as a private hospital. But yes, obviously there is a certain income criteria. So it is basically decided that the people who can avail public distribution system under the National Food Security Act 2013, or if you fall under the 40% bottom income quintile in the socio-economic caste census of 2011. What further can be done? First and foremost, we need to have a rural-centric approach. So we need to further provide insurance coverage penetration in the rural area. For that, we can basically utilize, let's say, for example, the Fasal Bima Yojana, the Ayushman Bharat Yojana. All of this can be, kind of utilized. The idea is that we should actually kind of target the much more technological intervention. So, for example, there is a company called as InsurTech. InsurTech is basically kind of utilizing artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data analytics to actually kind of identify a certain segment of the population which has more chances to avail such insurance cover. The same idea is that, let's say, for example, when you guys do any kind of payment on Paytm app, the Paytm app tells you that, see, I'm going to provide you any kind of cashback, or I'm going to provide you any kind of offer. So what this technology-based app is providing you, it is basically providing you some kind of value-added service. The idea is that why not to provide such innovative insurance coverage as a value-added service itself. So for example, let's say we say that, okay, if you are going to take a health cover or health insurance, then you will also get a free, let's say, yoga membership in the nearby gym. So such products will actually kind of, do a social engineering on the people. They will actually be kind of attracted to buy such insurance coverage. Also, there is an industry demand to kind of reduce the 18% GST which is charged on health and insurance premium. So that shall be taken into the cognizance by the government as well. Keep all of the suggestions in your mind, provide them as a way forward when you are writing this particular answer, and we move forward to the next news, where we are going to discuss a very serious social issue, and that is that how the sexual abuse survivors or the victims of the rape shall be treated by the government authorities. What is the context of the news? Recently, the Delhi High Court actually issued a series of guidelines to streamline procedures in the hospitals who are handling the medical termination of pregnancy, which specifically involves any kind of sexual assault survivors. After finding out that there was miscommunication and administrative lapses that had resulted in the denial of the timely medical care to a minor rape survivor who in this particular case was 17 years old. So first of all, let's try to understand that what are the laws which governs the process of abortion in our country. It is basically regulated by the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 2021, which basically amended and replaced the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1972, under which the termination of pregnancy is actually allowed under section 3B of the Act. So let's say I have become pregnant and I want to abort my pregnancy. I can do that up to 20 weeks, or that is approximately 5 months, by the advice of one registered medical practitioner. But after 20 weeks, so let's say between the 20 to 24 weeks, I can still abort. But now I will need the advice of 2 doctors. And they can prescribe such abortion only in certain special circumstances, such as, for example, if I am a survivor of rape, if I am a victim of incest, if I am any vulnerable woman, let's say, for example, I fall to the below poverty line, or let's say, for example, there is a kind of a change in the marital status which has taken place, during the pregnancy. So let's say, for example, I got pregnant, and then let's say, for example, I went to the diagnosis, and my husband find out that I'm going to have basically a girl child. So the kind of the prestige and the pride which people take to have a male child in our country, because they are going to basically inherit the generation and whatever. So because of that, he basically said that I should go with the abortion or not. So he basically said that, okay, now I'm going to divorce you. So in this case of change of marital status during the pregnancy, I am left with only one option, that I will go with kind of abortion. Such abortion can still take place, but now I will need the prescription of 2 doctors. After 24 weeks, the pregnancy or the termination of pregnancy, abortion is possible. But now for that purpose, a special state medical board would be created. And this state medical board can allow for abortion only in 2 exceptional circumstances. One is fetus abnormality, and the second is mental instability of the pregnant woman. Remember that this MTP Act of 2021 also includes the unmarried woman, and it also ensures the privacy of the person by preventing the disclosure of identity, as the right to privacy has been held as an integral part of the fundamental right to dignified life under Article 21 of the Constitution in the famous K.S. Puttaswamy judgment. So when we have understood that how the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 2021 works, let's try to understand the issues which prevails with the Act. First is very visible to you, that there exists a limitation within the law. So let's say, for example, after 24 weeks, imagine myself as a kind of a person who is a victim of rape, victim of fate already. Now I want to terminate the pregnancy after 24 weeks. Is it allowed to me? Absolutely not. Because for that, a state medical board would be created, and in only 2 exceptional circumstances, I can abort. So the idea is that there exists a limitation which is a kind of implied on me by the law itself. The second is that, let's say, for example, many of the time what happens, that when I'm saying that I want to terminate this pregnancy, I have become a kind of a victim of rape. When the law is not allowing me to do that, the only recourse with me is 2. 1, I go to the Supreme Court and I file a writ petition under Article 32 of the Constitution that my fundamental right under Article 21 is being violated. Or what I can do, that I can just will need to bear the child altogether. Bear the child of the person who has basically compromised my modesty at the first place. So don't you think that this particular limitations in the law is actually going to enhance the psychological impact and the trauma which I am facing? Third is that the social taboos which prevails, which actually restrict the freedom of my choice. Because the social taboo and the kind of the perception which the people has, the passed from generation to generation, that char log kya kahenge, because of that, many of the time the families, they don't want to indulge in all of these code procedures and all, because that will eventually kind of bring them bad name or bad reputation to their much reputed family about whom nobody knows and nobody cares about. So thus basically such victim of rapes are often kind of need to compromise and bear the child. The fourth is obviously such bearing of the child without having any inclination or will to do that. Don't you think that basically violates the right to body autonomy, which is also an integral part under the Article 21 right to dignified life altogether? Then let's say, for example, even if I'm going for this pregnancy, the act says that any such abortion shall be done by the specialized doctor. But there exists lack of accessibility to the safe abortion itself. Just look at the kind of glaring gap which exists. Almost 67% of the sanction posts of specialists at the community healthcare centers in India are actually vacant. Just look specifically at the gynecology, the kind of the vacancy which lies. So first of all, there is no expert. Then if we refer to the data for the abortions in our country, over 1.5 crore abortions takes place every year in our country. The idea is that 48.1 million pregnancies occur in our country, out of which 24 million or half of these are unintended pregnancies. 2/3 of all these unintended pregnancies actually ends in abortion. 22% or 1 in the 4 such abortions actually takes place in health facilities, and 73% or almost 3 in the 4 pregnancy terminations are actually done independently by purchasing medical method of abortion from a chemist or informal vendor. Then there exists a different interpretations of fetal viability. What is fetal viability? So basically it is constituted a time period after which it is considered that this fetus can also survive outside the female body. So basically now it has been considered as a kind of a living entity altogether. Various medical experts says that such fetal viability, or when the fetal actually becomes kind of a living entity, that take place in 28 weeks. However, as per the WHO norm, it is considered as 24 weeks. And that is why our law also says that after 24 weeks, you cannot go for abortion. Only in exceptional circumstances it is possible. So basically our, kind of the lawmakers has taken a kind of a pro-life approach, that after 24 weeks, the fetus has become a kind of a living entity. So the abortion or killing of that fetus is not a possibility. Only in exceptional circumstances it is allowed. The idea is that what are the steps we can take? First of all, there shall be a kind of a healthy balance between pro-life and pro-choice aspect. And that was also reflected in the Bhattan-Boro versus the State of Assam Act, which basically said that there shall be a transformative constitutionalism. So as the need of the society is changing, as the idea of right to body autonomy is developing much and much further, the constitution and the lawmakers shall also take the cognizance of it and reflect that in the law. This was also considered in the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment, which basically held that right to body autonomy is integral to right to personal liberty. Taking the cognizance of these judgments and the kind of the benchmarks, the Delhi High Court basically provided several directions which shall be followed by the hospitals by now. What it is? So whenever an investigating officer is present, a sexual assault survivor for medical examination, any separate identity verification is not that much required. Also, in the case which involves minors, the procedural safeguards which are applicable to a routine diagnostic cases, that should not be applied rigidly or mechanically. Then there shall be a comprehensive medical examination which must be conducted without delay. The hospital administrator, they shall immediately constitute a medical board to conduct the necessary examination and submit a status report to the appropriate authorities without awaiting any specific court orders. The SOPs and relevant legal guidelines shall be readily accessible in both emergency and gynecology departments. And the duty doctors shall be regularly sensitized about their obligations under the MTP Act of 2021. So keep this MTP Act very dear to you for the upcoming mains examination, and we move forward to the next news, where we are going to talk about the proposed AC temperature control norms which has been kind of released by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, which is an affiliated body with the Ministry of Power. What is the news? The news basically says that how the Union Minister of Power actually in a conference talked about to limit the operational range of the air conditions or the ACs which we have across the country, built on a plan which was devised by Bureau of Energy Efficiency in the year of 2018. What is the idea? So in 2018, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency basically issued a guideline for various commercial entities across the country, such as for example hotel chains, gyms, etc., and said that you should start focusing upon setting up a temperature at a certain level with which we can actually conserve more of energy. But remember that this was basically a kind of a voluntary provision to be followed by such commercial entities and not mandatory. Then came a government order in 2020 which basically mandated that now whenever the ACs are being sold, there will be a default setting of 24 degrees Celsius. But at the same time, obviously right now we can set our temperature at 16 degrees Celsius as well. So individual choice to control temperature setting was not hampered. You can still set up your temperature at 16 degrees Celsius. 24 degrees Celsius temperature is actually considered to be the most conducive for human living. Thus, now the government is saying that from now onwards, whatever the ACs will be manufactured, they shall be having a fixed temperature range of functioning, and that shall be between 20 to 28 degrees Celsius. What is this use of ACs which we are doing? So it's very obvious that there is taking place a huge heat wave across the country at this point of time. So it is very obvious that it has become unbearable for the people to actually live outside. They are first of all trying to take the comfort of their houses. And in that, they are basically setting up the temperature at 16, 17 or 18 degrees Celsius. The more lower the temperature, the more work the compressor has to do, and that's because the more energy consumption which will be required. The idea is that the India's power demand, if you look how it is connected to the use of air conditioners. So India's cooling demand or air conditioning demand, that itself was 50 gigawatt. So the total 1/5 of the peak power demand which we were discussing, almost 20% of that is only coming for the use of AC. And as per the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, by the year of 2030, it is going to increase to 200 gigawatt. Remember that as per the news report today, only 6% of the household actually have one or more ACs at this stage in our country. Imagine what if with the increasing income, the further AC installations start taking place. That will further increase the India's global warming woes, obviously. So anyway, because of the impact of the climate change, India's mean sea surface temperature has already risen by 1 degree Celsius from the year of 1950. And with the kind of the economic growth which we saw after the LPG reforms of 1991, 0.5 degrees Celsius of the temperature increase was actually registered in the last 30 years. The impact of this global warming which is taking place is so severe that in the year of 2023, the Indian Meteorological Department registered 77 heat wave spanning across a cumulative 536 days across the country. The Down to Earth report basically says that even till today, 80% of the urban and 90% of the rural household still uses ceiling fans as their primary method of cooling. But recently there is a large scale use of AC which has come into the foreplay, and the idea is that in the year of 2024 9.4 million units of ACs were actually sold. So again, the more use of AC, the more peak demand, the more reliance on thermal power. If we talk about the total installed power capacity, it is currently 456 gigawatt, out of which 217 basically comes from coal-based thermal power plants, which basically constitutes for 71% of our total power generation. So the more use of fossil, the more release of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, the more global warming it will increase. More global warming, more the temperature rises, more heat waves, more requirement of air conditioners. So it is basically a kind of a self-inducing chain altogether, and that is something which we need to break. Just look at with the increasing number of households with the AC, the comparison to total demand for electricity, how the role of AC is further going to kind of constitute a major share in our total peak demand altogether. And with this, don't you think that we will actually end up compromising the net zero emission target which we have set for ourselves to by the year of 2070, or the Panch Amrit target which we have set in the Glasgow summit of 2026? So what can be the ideal way forward? First and foremost is that we need to further put impetus on green energy. So for example, under your Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, on which we are basically trying to put impetus on the rooftop solar panel installation, or for example the Kusum Yojana, under which basically we are trying to solarize the agricultural pumps. So with these initiatives, there shall be much more impetus on increasing the renewable energy production, as we were discussing in the context of hydropower today. The second is that we need to actually kind of bring down the temperature in the urban areas specifically, and for that the afforestation is very important. For that, let's say for example, we can actually use the Miyawaki method of afforestation, and with such creation of more blue and green spaces. So for example, we can create or rejuvenate the lakes in the city under your Amrit Dharohar scheme. So under your Amrit Dharohar, Miyawaki, creation of more blue and green water spaces, we can actually decrease the heat island effect which prevails in the urban cities as well. Then in the recent articles, you might be coming across a very innovative idea which has kind of gained a lot of traction in the recent years, and that is high performance buildings. The idea of high performance building is, let's say for example, to use the solar panels, install it in a way to actually generate and kind of sustain the whole building consumption from this renewable energy altogether, to create the modules for rainwater harvesting, use this rainwater harvesting, recycle it and use it again. Provision for natural ventilation actually for the cooling of the building altogether. Creation of such kind of shades across the buildings with the trees to actually kind of cool down and reduce the use of ACs. We can actually create portable water storage. We can create your various kind of modular heat pump chillers and heat recovery ventilators. With all of this, we can actually kind of bring down the uses of AC, and that is going to be the prime idea. So keep these suggestions in your mind, use this in your GS3 answers as well, and we move forward to the next news, where we are actually going to read about a new technology which has featured in the news to actually treat various kind of tumors of cancer. Let's try to first understand the context of the news. A team of experts in the US has successfully used a technique called as step and shoot spot scanning proton arc therapy, or SPArc, to treat the patient's adenoid cystic sarcoma for the first time. SPArc works by targeting the tumors with proton therapy while sparing the surrounding tissue. So let's say for example, normally what we use radiotherapy. In the radiotherapy, the X-ray, they deposit the energy along its path, which potentially ends up harming the nearby organs and tissues as well. However, in this proton beam therapy, which you are basically using under this term of SPArc, it releases energy at a single point and disappears, thus sparing the nearby organs and tissues. So for example, if you are treating your cancer or tumor and you are going through this proton beam therapy, the idea is that your other organs surrounding that particular affected tissue, that is not going to be affected. How it works? So let's say for example, this is your infected tissue. We create a kind of an energy layer in that. What is energy layer? Energy layer is basically that part of the tumor which is affected the most. So now what we do, we basically start targeting this energy layer. This is the layer where basically a protein beam of specific energy is launched and targeted. And there takes place a deposition of radiation dose in this energy layer. And then we start tracking the amount of dose which is actually required, or the amount of proton beams which we actually has to hit that specific target through this cone beam computed tomography or CBCT scan. The moment we realize that the tumor is actually getting kind of much better position, then we start reducing the level of the protons, and as we see that okay, there is a kind of a recovery which has been made, then we can completely stop this particular specific energy beam altogether, thus not affecting the surrounding tissue. What is the result of it? So if we compare this SPArc technology with this SFO-IMPT, which we were basically using earlier, a kind of a current standard of care, there is a reduction delivered to brain stem by 10%, optical chiasm by 56%, and spinal canal by 90%. However, in using of this SPArc technology, there exist several issues. First of all, its efficacy has not yet proven to treat all kind of tumors which exist. So there might be certain limitations of treatment which can exist. We cannot still try, like universally. Second is large scale dissemination is not possible because of the heavy use of state-of-art technology. So it is obvious that, let's say if you are talking about the rural penetration of this technology in our country, it will actually take decades to reach there. Third is, the reason for that is the high cost of installation and the surgery. Also, if there is such high cost of installation, we were just discussing about the Ayushman Bharat Yojana. Ayushman Bharat Yojana says that such tertiary care or specialized surgery is also covered under the insurance cover. But the limited health coverage is basically that only 5 lakh rupees is being provided. So what if I am going to avail this treatment of SPArc, but the cost is coming to be 15 to 20 lakh rupees surgery? The government is giving me only 5 lakh rupees. And obviously I cannot, kind of afford such high out of pocket expenditure. So in that particular case, obviously the large scale dissemination of such technology is not a possibility yet. So we need to, do kind of further innovations to reduce down the cost of installation and surgery. Keep this in your mind. We move forward to the next news, where we are going to talk about a specific science mission which was also asked in this year prelims examination, and the name of that is Axiom 4. Why it has been made the news? Because the Indian astronaut Subhanshu Shukla and 3 others are actually expected to travel on the International Space Station on a specific date of 19th of June after the SpaceX of Elon Musk has successfully resolved the liquid oxygen leak in the Falcon 9 rocket. This Axiom space mission was actually to blast off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, but the launch had to be delayed first. Why? Due to the fuel leak in the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, and then due to a leak in the Russian section of the International Space Station where this Falcon 9 rocket is ultimately going to dock. Why it is so important? First of all, is it a mission by NASA? No. It is actually a 4th mission by a US-based space flight company named as Axiom Space. Why it holds so much importance for India? Because ISRO has actually invested 500 crore rupees to actually send Subhanshu Shukla, who will become the first Indian in the Earth orbit after 40 years. A question here, who was the first Indian to actually dock in the Earth's orbit? And he will eventually become the first Indian to actually board the International Space Station. Why ISRO is investing so much of money? Because Subhanshu Shukla is also part of the 4 members who will ultimately form the Gaganyaan crew, India's first manned space mission, which is going to be launched by ISRO. In this, what is the role of SpaceX? SpaceX is basically providing the Falcon rocket and the Crew Dragon spacecraft. The ultimate objective of the Axiom 4 space mission is to enable commercial activities like space tourism in the lower Earth orbit, and to actually kind of, as NASA is working, ISRO is working, SpaceX is working, all of these agencies are working, it will further enhance the global cooperation in the space exploration. There are several other important space missions which might feature in your prelims examination. One is obviously your NASA's Europa Clipper, which will eventually explore the Jupiter's moon, whose name is Europa. With its subsurface ocean, Europa actually harbors conditions which might be sustainable for life. Then there is your Blue Origins, the kind of a rival company of SpaceX that is basically launching Orbital Reef. This is basically a kind of a commercial space station which has been planned to be under the construction by the year of 2025, which will eventually become a hub for research, tourism and manufacturing in low Earth orbit. And then yes, absolutely the most important, India's Gaganyaan mission, which will be the India's first crewed space mission by ISRO to help India demonstrate its capabilities in the human space flight. And by doing this, India is eventually going to become the 4th country in the world to actually achieve this feat. Can you guys name the 3 countries and which was the first country to actually send the humans in the space? Just comment down that and we move forward to the last news of the day, where we are going to read about a new species of jumping spider which has come in the news. What is the context? The context is that a team of researchers has actually identified a new species of jumping spiders of SPArc Therapy subfamily in the southern India. I'm sorry for my mispronunciation. Known for their intelligent hunting skills and web invasion tactics. Why it is important? Is it of some relevance? Yes, because for the first time the genre Spartius and Sonata, which is a specific group within the subfamily of the jumping spiders, which are only previously known from the regions of Southeast Asia and Africa, they have been found in our country for the first time. So let's just try to learn some factual details about the jumping spider. First of all, when we talk about the spiders, almost 13% or the largest family of spider is jumping spider, which basically is called as Salticidae. Remember that when we talk about the jumping spiders, their front legs are actually longer than the rear legs, but they use their front legs only for grasping and they use their rear legs to actually make the jump. The jump, which is very important because they can actually jump the distance of 20 to 30 times of their body size altogether. Now, bite of a particular jumping spider is not detrimental to humans, but here the UPSC can play a trick. It will give you a term like all jumping spiders bite is not detrimental at all to the humans. In that case, obviously, some jumping spiders bite can lead to some detrimental impact on our health. So that in that case, that will be an extreme statement and that will be incorrect. Then they have 8 eyes. So obviously they see more colors than us humans. They are commonly found in tropics in our country as well. But they are also found worldwide as far as Arctic and Antarctica as well. There is some differences between the spiders and insects which you guys need to know about. When we talk about the body structure of the spider, they have 2 body segments and 8 legs. However, when we talk about the insects, they normally have 3 body segments and 6 legs. Then there are certain key features which are completely absent in spiders and normally found in insects. Such as, for example, the spider doesn't have antenna, they doesn't have wings, they do not go through the process of metamorphosis. However, insects normally have antenna, they have wings and they also undergo the process of metamorphosis. Then there are certain similarities. Both of them actually belongs to the same phylum and the phylum is of Arthropoda. And both have skeletons with their joint legs. So remember this important facts about the jumping spider, and with this we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation and thank you.